Hello and welcome to Sports Week. I'm your host Dan Tracy. I'm once again joined by my strike partner Tolu Shatadi. Tolu, we're back to the Premier League this weekend. We've got a big encounter on Merseyside. It's Liverpool versus Newcastle. Liverpool suffered a league defeat in their last outing. So did Newcastle. So both teams looking for maximum points to improve their European hopes. Which way does this go? Does more pressure get heaped on the shoulders of Arne Slot?
Yes, this is a very difficult game to actually predict, to be honest. I think on paper you probably think Newcastle have. I think a few weeks ago went on this really good run, and then all of a sudden, after they lost the first leg of the Carabao Cup to City, they disappointingly drew against bottom club Wolves 0-0, and then they lost that very important game at home against Aston Villa, and that just opened up whether or not they could get over the line against some of the bigger teams in the Premier League. They already lost to Liverpool this season. They got beaten by Arsenal. So there's just a talk around whether or not they can get it right against the big teams. Liverpool, on their part, the problem will be defenders. I saw Ryan Gravenberch play at centre-back against Karabakh. That was Karabakh. This is Newcastle United. There's another big injury scare. That's the one for the fullback, Jeremy Frimpong. It looked like he went off injured in the first few minutes of the game against Karabakh. We're not really sure how long he's going to be out for. So Liverpool are lacking defenders at the moment. And for the amount of intensity that a team like Newcastle United play with, especially the front men, they really need all the defenders that they can get. Liverpool themselves have not been in superb form. They drew with Burnley and Leeds in the last two games in the Premier League at home, and they barely beat Wolves 2-1, even though people will tell you that Wolves have put up some really good performances lately, but you still expect a team like Liverpool to get the better of them quite comfortably. That wasn't the case. I think for Slot, it's very interesting, some of his comments building up to the game against Karabakh, where he talked about the fact that the team is in transition. And you look at the team and you wonder, with the amount of money they've spent, he probably shouldn't be saying that. But he said it a lot of times. And I think for Liverpool, they know exactly what Newcastle are going to do. But the difference is Newcastle are a different team in St. James's Park and a totally different team when they play away from home. They could have been blown away early on against PSG in the Champions League. It finished 1-1. And I think if you listen to that, if you heard the result, you probably would give Newcastle credit for going to the home of the champions of Europe and getting a draw. But the truth is, the champions missed the penalty early on there. They missed a couple of really good chances, and they could easily have been blown away very early on there. So that's a problem, that if Liverpool start well at Anfield, Newcastle could be out of the game maybe in the first half. So it's a really delicate one. Liverpool struggling with defenders. Newcastle are struggling with a bit of invention and intensity at the moment. So it's one that could go either way.
When you look at Liverpool's form going into the Bournemouth game last week, it was unbeaten in 10 in the Premier League. Now that sounds a good run. However, with that defeat to Bournemouth, you then look at it and it's 1 win in 6, 4 draws in their last 5. So it's easy to kind of change the lens. Is it good form, bad form? But ultimately, it is 1 win in 6. They are outside the top 5 in terms of Champions League places. So this feels like a must-win encounter to reboot their top 4 charge.
Yeah, how many times have we said that? And I was quick to say that a
Yes.
few weeks ago when there was talk around the fact that they'd gone on this long unbeaten run. And like I said earlier, they've drawn against Leeds United and have drawn against Burnley at home at Anfield. So that just tells you, initially when they went on that really bad run of losing games, I think the first thing was everyone thought, stop losing games. But I think over time, there's been a misconception of not losing with actually not winning. A team like Liverpool shouldn't be content with just not losing. They should be winning games, especially the games like the ones that I pointed out at. They should be beating Burnley at home. They should be beating Leeds United at home. And that didn't happen. I feel like against Newcastle this weekend, I think up top, they look pretty decent. I think they'll worry anyone at Anfield with the front guys that they've got. Florian Wirtz looking really dangerous, especially when he's playing very close to the striker. Sometimes he looks like the makeshift striker, like a false nine once in a while for Liverpool. So I think for Slot, it's a reboot. It's a game they have to win. How will they cope under the pressure of knowing that they have to beat Newcastle? It's almost like a reversal of roles, like when they went to Arsenal and they stayed in the game, really were stubborn against Arsenal, didn't allow them create a lot, and they carried the goal threat. Newcastle United could borrow from that playbook. Newcastle can stay in the game. You saw that against PSG. That early moment where they rocked a bit in the first few minutes, once they were able to get over that, they were pretty decent at the back. And I think if they could keep the likes of Dembele, Doué, Barcola, Vitinha out at PSG, Liverpool have their work cut out. To be honest, I feel like this one could be one that is won from set pieces. Liverpool are a decent team from set plays, especially with Virgil van Dijk. Newcastle United also have their own threats. Tao and Fabian Schär, if he plays. It's going to be one that's determined by really fine margins. I feel like Liverpool cannot afford to lose it. If they lose it, question marks will be raised again. And you look at the odds for the next manager to be sacked in the Premier League, and Arne Slot comes. He's way ahead of the likes of, believe it or not, the Nottingham Forest manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, and even Thomas Frank at Spurs. And that's absolutely ludicrous when you consider that he won the Premier League last year when no one thought Liverpool would win it at the start of the season. So it's that kind of thing that could decide a lot. I think that Liverpool must win. Will they win? I still feel like they're lacking one defender. They only have one recognizable centre-back, and that could be an issue against this Newcastle team.
Well, when the two teams met last August, Liverpool won it in dramatic fashion in the last minute. So, Tolu, with your betting cap on, is this going to go the same way, or do you see it going differently?
This is one that I probably would avoid betting on the winner here. I think I'd probably go both teams to score first up. I think that because of Liverpool's defensive deficiencies, I think they will concede. And Newcastle also showed in midweek and over the last few weeks that they also can concede goals. So I feel like both attacks will shine in this one. So I expect goals. And if I can probably, I feel like there'll be more goals in the first half than in the second half in this one, because I think the European exertions might come to bear in the second half. I think both of them will want to start really quickly in that one. So I think both teams will score. And if you've got the heart for it, I think you go the first half as the highest scoring half.
Great strategy, Tolu. Thanks for your time as always. I'll speak to you next week.
Thank you very much, Dan.